Want to get your attention. Thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. This was an impromptu thing our first year, kind of by accident. We thought we'd unveil some plaques and have some people over. Now this seems to be one of the favorite things we do here. And we've got this is a special night for us in our school district and for White River High School. And this is our third time doing this, and it's just been an amazing evening. The opportunity for us to honor people that have been so important to our history and our athletic history, and we're really, really excited about it. We've got some folks who want to recognize here tonight. We've got previous Hall of Famers from our inaugural class, Hall of Famer John Hippa. Off our 95 wrestling team who was honored last year, I think Jeremy Dixon is here. There he is. Looking forward to tonight. We're really excited for four people that are here and two that are with us here tonight. And we've got Hall of Famer Ben Adink is here tonight with us. And joining him to be inducted tonight is Marcus Dixon. So when we're done, feel free to take some photos, and this is a lot of fun. We try to keep the principal, Mr. Cody Mothershed, here from falling off the ladder. But let's unveil some plaques here. Nice team job, huh? And there we go.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to your high school as we celebrate the 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th members of the White River Athletic Hall of Fame as they take their place tonight alongside the athletic best of both Buckley and White River High Schools. Before we begin, however, we would like to take a moment to thank our superintendent, Dr. Scott Harrison, Assistant Superintendent Heather McMullen, and the members of the White River School Board. Joining us tonight from the school board are James Johnson and Board President Denise Vogel for your unwavering commitment to White River Athletics. Thank you. Thank you to the Enumclaw Courier-Herald for your continued support of high school athletics. Thank you to our principal, Cody Mothershed, for his support of this Hall of Fame. And a very special thank you to the man who sees to it that everything works tonight, from technology to lights and sound, Bob Engelbert. I'd like to ask you to please join me in a round of applause for those whose generous donations allow this Hall of Fame to operate. Svenco Communications, Haugen Dairy, Nielsen Construction, Plateau Garage Doors, Karen Rodriguez, Tony and Linda Anderson, and because they have always supported me in whatever I'm involved in, my own parents, John and Carol Dorsey. We would like to recognize any members of our Athletic Hall of Fame from the induction classes of 2020, 21, or 22 who are here with us tonight. Please stand and be recognized. We'd like to recognize any current or past coaches and athletes from either Buckley or White River High Schools who have joined us here tonight. Please stand and be recognized. Coaches and athletes. And because we all know it wouldn't be a high school athletic event without cheerleaders, if there are any current or former White River Buckley High School cheerleaders here tonight, would you please stand and be recognized? Because after everything you've done to support others, we would like to support you. Thank you. And of course, we would like to extend a very special welcome to the induction class of 2023 and the friends, teammates, coaches, and families who have joined them here tonight. For Paul Strand, Bob McKean, Ben Adink, and Marcus Dixon. So why do we do this? We celebrate athletics because it teaches valuable lessons like commitment, self-discipline, and perseverance. From an early age, athletics teaches us to win with grace, lose with dignity, and accept putting the needs of others before our own. We learn how to be a good teammate and how to celebrate the success of others. We carry these lessons with us long after our playing days are over, and then look to pass them along to our own children. Because as the years begin to pile up, we come to realize that our coaches, teammates, and even our opponents have all taught us lessons we can use to succeed long after we've turned in our gear and we've taken our seats up in the stands. To watch a new generation play a game that we love, knowing full well that there's a lot more going on out there than a bunch of kids trying to win a game might realize. That's why we do this. So let's begin. June 2nd, 1913 was a perfect day to take in a ball game. The skies were clear, the temperature was right around 80 degrees, and the Boston Braves were in town to play the Pittsburgh Pirates. The first inning went well enough, and the Braves took a 1-0 lead, but by the bottom of the third, things had changed, and their manager had seen enough. His starting pitcher had worked himself into the wrong end of a 6-1 score, and the call went out to the bullpen for the new left-hander to begin warming up. Making just his second major league appearance, Paul Strand was quickly figuring out just how rough the fans at Shibe Park could be. He got through the fourth inning without any trouble, but the leadoff hitter he walked in the fifth was now standing on second, and the crowd was making sure that Paul Strand knew that things were about to get very serious. As a bow-legged veteran with huge hands and a barrel chest made his way out to the plate, dug in, and stared right into the soul of a kid who just 3 months earlier had been sitting in a class at Buckley High School daydreaming about what it would be like to face a real major league hitter. Standing there, just 60 feet 6 inches away from Paul Strand, with a 40-ounce bat in his hands, was the Flying Dutchman himself, Honus Wagner, who by this time was well on his way to becoming one of the first 5 players inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame at Cooperstown. Now, if this was a movie, this would be the part where just as he was going into his windup, everything on the screen would freeze, and the narrator would cut in with the line, "I suppose you're wondering how a 19-year-old kid from Buckley found himself pitching to Honus Wagner." And the story would begin. Like any good story, this one's about a kid with a dream. There are setbacks, heartbreaks, an unlikely comeback, and in the end, he gets the girl and learns that the real prize isn't the one he originally chased, but a treasure that isn't made of gold. And like any good sports story, it starts in a small town with a kid pitching for his high school team that has a lot more going for him than meets the eye. Maybe it was the mountains that drew 2 Swedish immigrants to Carbonado in the 1880s. Maybe it was the winters that reminded them of home, or the promise of steady work down in the coal mines of Wilkeson. But it was here, in the shadow of Mount Rainier, that Gustav and Hannah Strand decided to make their home and start a family. A few years later, they moved to South Prairie, bought a farm, and raised Paul, his sisters Ellen and Bernice, and his little brother Carl. At Buckley High School, Paul was a good student, turned out for both football and baseball, and in the summers was paid $5 a game by teams in Wilkeson and South Prairie to pitch, which is pretty good money for a teenager in 1910. That summer, the manager of the Spokane Indians caught one of his games and signed him for $125 a month. Or to be more specific, his parents signed, because at 16, Paul Strand wasn't old enough to sign his own professional contract. After just 4 starts, the Boston Red Sox officially claimed him. But before the ink on that contract even had a chance to dry, he began reporting pain in his left shoulder. And after a few more starts, he was shut down for the season. Paul Strand was just 16 years old, pitching professionally against grown men in an age when sports medicine didn't really exist. So he learned to toughen up and rub some dirt on it. And when his shoulder gave out, that was it. The Red Sox released him and he headed back home. Over the next few years, he spent his summers playing in the minor leagues, then returning each fall back to Buckley to finish high school, hang out with his friends, and try to ignore a growing problem in his pitching arm. But teenagers are strong and they have dreams to chase. And in 1913, he made the Boston Braves as a relief pitcher. He pitched in 7 games that year, had an ERA of 2.12, and got a hit against the Cincinnati Reds in his first game in the Bigs. He was back with the club in 1914, and things really could have started out much worse for the Braves. By July, they were 15 games behind the first-place New York Giants and 5 games out of 7th place. But then they started winning, and Paul Strand was a big part of the push, winning 5 key games down the stretch with an RA of 2.44, helping his team win the pennant and the 1914 World Series. That next year, he was back with the Braves, but so was the pain in his shoulder, and by mid-season, he was sent down to the minors, effectively closing the first chapter of his major league career. He switched to the outfield to ease the stress on his shoulder and spent the next few years trying to make it as an outfielder. Although he played well, hitting a career .334 in the minors, he wasn't able to catch anyone's eye until 1922, when it all came together for him playing with the Salt Lake City Bees, when he won the Pacific Coast League Triple Crown with 289 hits, 28 home runs, and a batting average of .384. 1923 was even better. He hit .394, won the Triple Crown again, and set league records for home runs, runs scored, total bases, and most putouts. And if that wasn't enough, his 325 hits set a minor league record. Paul Strand was officially back on the radar, and that's when Connie Mack of the Philadelphia A's came calling. But things in Philadelphia didn't work out as well as he had hoped. You see, Strand threw left, but he hit right, and this gave him an awkward swing that Mack wanted fixed. So as soon as he arrived in camp, they immediately began changing both his stance and his swing. In 47 games with the A's, his batting average never got over .250, and by July, he found himself back in the minors, and his major league career was officially over. He moved back west, where he had won the hearts of Salt Lake City baseball fans. But more importantly, he was there to marry Esther Carlos. He went back to minor league ball, and over the next 5 years hit .315, hoping for another shot that never came. After 16 years in professional baseball, it was time. So he took a job at his father-in-law's plumbing company, and together with Esther, built a life in Salt Lake City where they attended church, did charity work, and grew the business. But good times can't always last, and after 20 years of marriage, Esther passed away. Paul married again a few years later when he fell in love with Lorraine McCormick, a local school teacher who sang in the church choir and volunteered her time at a children's hospital. They loved going to ball games, and Paul would usually make his way down into the clubhouse to swap a few stories or give advice to the players. And everyone in Salt Lake seemed to know that he always carried miniature bats around with him wherever he went, just so he could give them away to kids who came up to say hi to the old ball player. Baseball gave him a home, a good job, and a special place in the hearts of fans of both Salt Lake City and Boston. It gave him love not once, but twice, and stories that seemed beyond belief. The first 5 members inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame were Walter Johnson, Christy Mathewson, Honus Wagner, Ty Cobb, and Babe Ruth. Paul Strand played against them all. In 1914 at the Polo Grounds, he and Christy Mathewson were the starting pitchers, and when Mathewson left the game, Strand held a 6-0 lead on him. He hit a single past Ty Cobb, a triple off Walter Johnson, and while playing center field in Yankee Stadium, caught a fly ball hit by none other than Babe Ruth. In 1999, the Salt Lake Tribune named Paul Strand as one of the 50 greatest athletes in Utah sports history. He was inducted to the Tacoma-Pierce County Sports Hall of Fame in 1961, the Pacific Coast League Hall of Fame in 2004, and to this day, the Atlanta Braves proudly fly a banner honoring the 1914 World Series Braves. He was a charter inductee to the Utah Sports Hall of Fame in 1970, and the 325 hits he got in 1923 still stands a century later as the record in all of minor league baseball for the most hits ever in a season. Now, I said earlier that if this was a movie, right as he was going into his windup, everything on the screen would freeze, and the narrator would cut in to ask how a kid from Buckley could find himself on the pitcher's mound at Shibe Park, staring at one of the game's all-time greats. Then his story would be told. The highs and lows, the championship he won, and the losses he endured. Eventually, it would bring us back to 1913, and Paul Strand, with a 2-2 count on Honus Wagner, a man on second, and a crowd that smelled blood. We'd see him get the sign, check the runner, and start his windup. A moment later, the camera would zoom in, and we'd see a smile cross his face. And from off screen, we'd hear, "Strike 3, batter out." We have located family members of Paul Strand living in South Carolina, but they were unable to make it across the country for tonight's ceremony. We will certainly see to it that they receive both this plaque and the link to our website once we're able to post a video of the ceremony. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to need a round of applause they can hear all the way in South Carolina as we welcome to the White River Athletic Hall of Fame World Series champion, Paul Strand. High school sports means something in this town. It always has. On game night, you'll find students, family, and fans filling the stands out at the stadium or inside the gym as cheerleaders and the pep band build excitement, and kids in maroon and gold give it everything they've got on a Buckley Friday night to win another game for the Hornets. For years, these stories were told by Bob McKean, armed with a microphone, a roster, and an extensive knowledge of sports. Bob put into words White River football and basketball games, and in the process, he became the voice of the Hornets. Born in Hoquiam, it was a winding road that brought Bob to Buckley. He grew up in the foothills of the Olympic Mountains, in a small town built on logging that for over a century has been locked in a heated rivalry with a neighboring town on the other side of a river, eventually settling here, in the foothills of the Cascade Mountains, in a small town built on logging that for over a century has been locked in a heated rivalry with a neighboring town on the other side of a river. After high school, he enrolled in Central Washington State College to earn his degree in education, and it was here that he met Barbara and they fell in love. They graduated, got married, and in 1964 set out to start a new life together. Their first stop was in the tiny Central Washington town of Pateros, where Bob taught 5th grade. But he and Barbara were young and not ready to settle into one place. So they found themselves drawn to a series of jobs in small towns across the state, in places like Cosmopolis, Sifton, Benton City. Each stop bring them new opportunities and new adventures as Bob built a career teaching everything from elementary to high school. After earning his master's degree in administration from Washington State University, Bob accepted a position as superintendent of the Crescent School District. But the pull of teaching proved to be too much, and after 6 years of working in the office and attending school board meetings, he headed back to the classroom, eventually accepting a position to teach math at White River Middle School and coach the 7th and 8th grade track team. That's when he learned that back in the late 70s, White River had a short-lived and very successful cross-country program, but for a variety of reasons, the team had folded. Well, that just wasn't going to work for Bob. You see, several years earlier when he was teaching in Joyce, a group of runners came to him and asked if he would work with them. Bob said yes, even though he didn't really know anything about running. So he started to learn. He found he had a real talent for it. So when he heard there were kids at White River who wanted to run, he was ready to step in. And after a few meetings, cross country was officially back at White River. And once again, kids laced up their shoes and started to run the back roads of Buckley. Under the guidance of Coach McKean, these kids were about to start something really amazing. In that first season, Joanne Maris went to the state tournament. The next year, Jessie Loomis and Vicki Williams went. And under the leadership of Coach McKean, in only its third season back, 7 girls competed in the state tournament. Doreen Lavander finished second, and as a team, they placed 6th overall, as the first pieces of what was becoming a powerhouse running program were officially in place. And it was Bob McKean that put them there. He would take the team up to Crystal Mountain for a run to the top. They went on team retreats to Port Townsend and Seaside, Oregon, and occasionally he took what he called a mafia run, where he would drive them somewhere like Mud Mountain Road, drop them off, tell them he'd see them back at the high school. But he did more than that, much more. He told jokes. He never seemed to run out of dad jokes or puns, one after another, relentlessly. The more they groaned, the more he loved it, and he never missed a chance to tell them another one. He created a community of runners and helped countless kids who just needed someone to believe in them. Kids who were impacted by Coach McKean, who now, if they're not 50 yet, can't believe how close they are to it, but who still remember how he impacted their lives and how he was always there for them. That phrase, he was always there for them, kept coming up, kid after kid, decades after they left White River. They still remembered that no matter what was going on, he was always there for them, and that was the message they wanted me to hear. He found underdogs, and he gave them a place to be successful. He found a kid who couldn't run the mile in middle school, and he made her a cross-country athlete. He found a short kid who couldn't make a basket in a game, and he made her a lockdown defender. He found kids who needed support, and he made them feel important. He found kids who wanted to run, and he made them really good at it. Bob coached cross-country, track, and basketball for over 40 years, and the only thing he ever insisted upon for himself was that the team had to stop at Miner's Burgers in Yakima whenever they were coming home from a race in Eastern Washington. Because let's be honest, those burgers are amazing. Now, it's no secret that the best runner he ever coached was Andy Maris. And while Andy was becoming the best high school runner in the nation, it never occurred to Bob to worry that more experienced coaches were coming around to work with him. Because he always knew it wasn't just about making Andy better. It was about growing as a coach, so he could make every kid on his roster better. So whenever Andy worked out with an elite coach or went to an elite camp, Bob went too. And he wrote everything down so he could bring it back. And that's how he and Andy made everyone on the team better. After retiring from his career as a public school teacher, he worked at City University as a field supervisor, and he instructed students working towards their master's degree in teaching. He gave back to the community through his involvement with the Kiwanis Club, and he also served on the Buckley Planning Commission. He became an umpire for softball, a basketball referee, and officiated football games for 30 years. He wrote a book on the history of high school basketball in Washington and became a go-to source for the Seattle Times whenever they needed research for a story they were writing about prep basketball. He was an official announcer at the state tournament for cross country, track and field, and wrestling. And when he passed away, he asked that instead of flowers, that donations be made to the White River Athletic Department. He did it so he could help the kids out one more time. Bob's been gone for a decade now, but the program he built remains. Bob coached here from 1984 to 1994. Since 2005, cross country at White River has been coached by a man who grew up in Hoquiam and was educated at Central Washington University. So it's not totally surprising that these two really had a knack for finding each other to talk about Hoquiam and Ellensburg, but mostly White River Runners. It was while these two Hoquiam guys talked that Bob showed just how much it really meant to him, because he remembered everything and everyone. He remembered races, times, and most importantly, he remembered the people he got to know, because there's no way you can remember details like he did without caring about the people in the story. In the 38 years since Bob McKean restarted cross country here, 65 boys and 101 girls have competed for White River at the state tournament. At least one White River runner has competed at the state tournament in 33 of the 38 years we have fielded a cross-country team, and there is now an unbroken streak of White River runners at the state tournament that stretches back 22 years. And Bob McKean built that program. And in 2001, he was recognized for this work when he was inducted into the Washington Cross Country Coaches Hall of Fame. Unfortunately, the McKean family is unable to be with us tonight, as they must attend to a pressing family matter. So, to accept the induction for Coach McKean will be another son of Hoquiam and the current White River Cross Country coach, Damian Marlowe. We will see to it that the family receives the plaque, and I promise to send them a video of tonight's induction as well. So let's be sure we're here for the family, as Bob was always there for his athletes, and give a warm round of applause as we welcome to the White River Athletic Hall of Fame, Coach Bob McKean.
Thank you to the White River Hall of Fame for honoring Coach Bob McKean. It's my honor to accept this award for a fellow cross-country guy and a son of Hoquiam. I honestly didn't realize how often my life intersected with Bob's. When Bob first started coaching cross-country here, I was in first grade in Hoquiam. Every morning I'd walk to school. I'd walk past his parents' house on C Street on my way to the school bus stop. My next intersection, as Coach Dorsey said, was at the 2001 State Cross Country Meet, watching from the crowd as he was inducted in the State Cross Country Hall of Fame. I was shocked that a fellow Hoquiam guy was being inducted into the Hall of Fame. But then I also remember thinking, where the heck is this White River High School place? Right? After that, Bob and I had a tradition when I was taking athletes over to state cross-country meet over in Pasco. Bob always worked at the tournament, and as all the teams arrived, he would be at the booth where we would pick up our packets and get our race bibs and course maps. Bob always saw to it that he was the one to check us in and hand us our race bibs. He did it every year and clearly made sure ahead of time to everyone else that was working there that he would take care of White River and be the one to check us in. He did it for track too. It was our tradition. Once Bob gave us our packet, we all knew that we were officially there. We had made it to the state tournament. So again, thank you Hall of Fame for inducting Coach McKean into the Hall of Fame, and I'll see that the family gets this plaque.
If you're at a White River basketball game and you know where to look, you'll find, tucked into the crowd, in seats that tradition itself has reserved for them, a handful of fans who have been watching the Hornets play for decades. They've seen it all, and they can tell you that the greatest basketball game that any White River team ever played just may have been on the night of March 10th, 1995, inside the Tacoma Dome in the state semifinals against O'Dea. Seeded 10th, White River had already blown up the bracket by knocking off both Chehalis and Capital to put themselves in that semifinal game against O'Dea, the number one ranked team in the state, and, according to at least one publication, the sixth best team on the West Coast. Which is impressive, but that doesn't mean that the Hornets weren't really good themselves. It just means it wasn't very hard to find people inside the dome that night who expected O'Day to win and move on to the finals. But that's not how things played out. After holding their own all night, the Hornets were down by 6 with less than a minute to play when they hit a three-pointer that closed the score to 3. That's when two things happened. O'Day went cold at the free throw line, and White River stayed hot from behind the arc, hitting another 3 late in regulation to tie the game and force overtime. On the court that night was a 6'5" sophomore named Ben Adding, who averaged 12 points a game that year, and he was absolutely ready for this moment. As a matter of fact, he's the one who scored first in overtime to give the Hornets the lead that they never gave up, as White River knocked off the number 1 seed, sent the 5,000 or so fans from Buckley that night into absolute pandemonium, and got their tickets punched to the finals. The championship game against Franklin High School was also a classic, but an absolutely heartbreaking one. Fans of the NBA will recognize the name Jason Terry. Well, before his 19-year NBA career began, he went to Franklin. And that kind of talent is hard to overcome in what turns out to be a one-point game. But he's not the player we're interested in tonight. Born in Burien and homeschooled most of his early years, Ben Adding quickly found basketball to be a great way to meet kids and make friends after his family moved to Buckley. Since he was already 6'1" as a 7th grader, it wasn't really a surprise that basketball would be a sport. But being tall and good in middle school will only get you so far. Because if you hang out at enough high school basketball games, you'll figure out that there are actually a lot of tall kids out there. So again, being tall will only get you so far, and it won't really get anyone into an athletic Hall of Fame. What gets you in is talent, hard work, and opportunity. According to his high school coaches, Doug Galloway and John Hippa, the talent was obviously there, so that was one piece. And Galloway told me that Ben was always willing to work hard in practice, and he would simply outwork people to turn himself from a tall kid who used to dominate the youth leagues out in Burien into an impact player at both the high school and collegiate levels. So there was the second piece. All that was left was opportunity, and as we're about to find out, those are on the way. But opportunity is a funny word, because you have to realize that more often than not, opportunities are just another chance for hard work. Opportunities like working with coaches like Lyle McIntosh out at Gig Harbor, and learning from someone whose job it is to stop you, then listening to his honest assessments about your game and doing something about it. Or becoming friends with players like Brian Scalabrini, or kids from that Gig Harbor team, and playing against them whenever someone could find an open gym. Or getting up to Carbonado whenever one of the Banks or Argo kids could get their hands on the keys up to that gym. And knowing that you'd better be tough up there because they don't give out cheap fouls in Carbonado. Or spending the summer after your sophomore year, averaging 18 points a game on an elite select team, so you're ready as a junior to help the Hornets put together a 22-4 season, win league for the 3rd straight year, make a return trip to the state tournament, and get named the league's most valuable player. Then, shouldering all that as a senior, and averaging 25 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, and 2 steals a game. Being named the league MVP his 2nd year in a row. Chosen by your classmates as the male athlete of the year, the Tacoma Athletic Commission's most valuable basketball player for Pierce County, the Tacoma News Tribune Player of the Year, being selected to play in an all-star game of the best players from Pierce and King counties, and then being named that game's MVP, and following that up with a selection to the All-State team, scoring 16 points, grabbing 12 rebounds, and being named the most valuable player for that game as well. Now, in case you're wondering, that will get the attention of college recruiters. And of course, Ben received several offers to continue playing at the next level. And after long conversations with his parents and coaches, he signed with Leon Rice at Yakima Valley Community College because they were putting together an incredible team out there, and the work he would do would open up more opportunities. Ben started both years he was at Yakima Valley. The first season was good and the team went 23-10, but that next year was special. Selected as team captain, Ben helped his team off to a record of 31-2. They beat teams by an average score of 91-71, set the record at Yakima Valley for the most wins in a season, and won regional titles both years he played. They received an invitation to play in the National Community College Basketball Championships and finished third in the nation. Personally, Ben averaged 14 points and 4.6 rebounds a game, was awarded first-team all-conference honors, and named the school's Athlete of the Year. This opened up even more opportunities, and when the new coach for the University of Hawaii at Hilo was looking for players, he found exactly who he was looking for in Ben Adding. Hilo hadn't had a winning program in over a decade, and Coach Jeff Law needed to change that. So he was looking for smart guys who were strong both offensively and defensively. So he got on a plane and he headed to Yakima. Once he was offered a full ride, Ben grabbed some sunscreen, packed his shorts, and got on the next plane for the islands. He was named a starter right away and selected as team captain. And then, because he always worked hard, he received his degree after just 3 years of college, took an internship, and headed into the world of business, where he quickly found that the same competitive drive he used to find success on the basketball court was still there for him in the business world. He had been an all-state player in high school, an all-conference player in college, and now, in his first year with Ed Jones Investing, Ben was one of the top producers in the nation. But now that he was out of college, well, it was time to get serious. Back when he was at Yakima, it was this girl who drove up from Wazoo to see her brother. Well, Ben just happened to be a friend of his, and that's how we met Jada. Eventually, he asked her out, things went well, and now it was time to buy a ring and marry her. They started a family and began building a life in Ephrata. Then he decided it was time to look for an opportunity to give back. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have ever spent a lot of time in Grant County, but if you haven't, there's not a whole lot out there. So when Elmira Cooley Heartline High School was looking for a basketball coach, they probably weren't expecting to find an all-state, all-conference collegiate player living just down the road who happened to be interested in coaching girls basketball. In his 4 years leading that program, the Warriors won the district tournament 3 times and finished 5th and 2nd in state. Ben and Jada saw another opportunity and brought a faith-based online education program to high school students throughout the Ephrata area when they helped establish the DNA Academy. Today, Ben Adding manages new business development and serves as the Chief Financial Officer at Columbia River Advisors, a financial planning company that he and his longtime friend Brian Scalabrini helped found. Ben and Jada are the proud parents of Lindsay, Sienna, and Chase, and have opened up their home to Kaisa and Rosa when they had nowhere else to turn. Now these 2 former players and coaches have taken on the role of parents, sitting in the stands and cheering for their kids at volleyball games and tennis matches. And Lindsay, their oldest, has followed her father's footsteps into college athletics by playing volleyball at Eastern University in Pennsylvania, as the next generation of Addings now looks for their opportunities to be successful. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the White River Athletic Hall of Fame, All-League, All-State, All-Conference, and the Tacoma News Tribune Player of the Year, Ben Adding.
Thank you so much for this honor. If I'm ever having a bad day, John, I'm calling you and letting you cheer me up. You can tell me how great I am, because that was awesome. I'm glad my wife got to hear that. So bad day, she's good to go there. I was thinking about one other award that I'm pretty proud of. It's a team award. I'm not trying to take individual credit for this, but in the whole time I played at White River High School, we never lost to Enumclaw. Big deal in my mind. And I let the people know that from Enumclaw. So anyways, so many people help make this possible. I'm so appreciative to all those people. Such an honor to be up here with Paul and Bob and Marcus and be part of this community. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart.
For more than 50 years, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or NOAA as it's more commonly known, has studied weather patterns around the globe. Then, they work with agencies like NASA and the National Weather Service to study the conditions that create extreme storms. Now, some of you are probably wondering where I'm going with this, but give me a minute because I'm getting there. Using satellites, NOAA charts these storms and plots the locations of millions of lightning strikes that hit the nation every year. So among other things, they can tell you that it's a myth that lightning never strikes the same place twice. This has cost the American taxpayers millions of dollars, when all they ever needed to do was pick up the phone and call a few people right here in Buckley, who would have been more than happy to tell them, we already knew lightning can strike the same place twice. Because in 1990, White River had the best high school distance runner in the nation. And in 2012, it happened again. Marcus Dixon always knew he wanted to run. To be honest, he never really had a chance because the Dixons are runners. His grandfather Paul set a school record in the 800-meter dash on a dirt track that stood for over 50 years. His sister Melissa competed at state cross country. And when he was 8, Marcus traveled to North Carolina to watch his brother Mike set a national high school record in the 4x800 relay at the Adidas Outdoor Championships. He watched his sister Mallory run. Then, together with his brother Matt and the Green Twins, he won a state championship in the 4x4 relay. So the whole family is fast, and they're all competitive. So it really can't come as much of a surprise to find out that they've been known to lace up their running shoes every once in a while, put their pride on the line, see who's still got it. I don't know how many of you know this, but for decades, the entire Dixon family has gathered out at Deep Lake for what they call a fun run. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all of them. There's no getting out of it. And they race each other around the lake. Since they're all runners, they all know how to plan a race. So they stagger everyone's start time, making the fastest wait as everyone else gets a head start. Then they gotta catch them before they finish. If they've timed it right, everyone should be closing in on each other right as they hit the final turn and sprint for the finish. Now I'm certain that watching Grandpa Paul set that school record, or watching Mike set a national record, must have been incredible. And since the 4x4 state championship that Matt and Marcus won is on YouTube, I can tell you, that's a great race. But there's no way those could be better than watching this family come into the final stretch in a race for absolutely everything, as both sibling and generational rivalries fight those straining middle-aged hamstrings. And lungs, gasping for air, find the strength to call out to loved family members just so they know they're about to be passed. In a race that, for my money, has to be the best in the area. Now, Marcus won the last fun run, but that's not why we're all sitting around here talking about him tonight. So let's take a look at what else he's done. He broke Andy Maris's 22-year-old school record in the 1600. He has 5 state championships and finished second in state 3 times. He set school records here in the 400, the 800, the 1600, and the 4x4 relay. He was the SBSL Track Athlete of the Year as a junior and as a senior. He was named the Tacoma Athletic Commission Track Athlete of the Year. He won the Brooks PR Invitational in 2012. He ran the fastest 800 for a high schooler in the nation. And a decade later, that time still stands as the second fastest in the state of Washington. According to Track and Field News, he still has one of the 50 fastest times in the mile ever for a high school kid nationwide. He was the 2012 Gatorade Male Athlete of the Year for the state of Washington. As a Division I athlete at BYU, he finished in the top 3 in meets at USC, Stanford, the Air Force Academy, and BYU. And he won his events in meets at the University of Arizona, BYU, Sacramento State, and USC. He was a top 10 finisher 38 separate times in Division I competition. He finished 9th at the Penn Relays. He competed at the Pan American Junior Championships in Colombia. He competed in the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation Championships 4 times, finishing in the top 10 every year. He competed in the NCAA Regional Tournament 4 times. He was singled out by U.S. Track and Field and Cross Country Coaches Association for academic honors 3 separate times. He still has the 7th fastest time in the 800 in BYU indoor competition history. And when he was still in high school, ESPN posted articles about him on their webpage. Not once, but twice. And when ESPN says you're good, you're good. But none of that actually tells you anything about Marcus Dixon, except that he's faster than you are, and in all honesty, you should have known that already. So here's a story about Marcus Dixon that you need to hear. In 2012, Marcus set the 2A state tournament record in the mile. Every year after that race finished, his coach, Damian Marlowe, would text him just to let him know that his state tournament record still stood. But last year it happened. His record in the mile was broken by a kid from Sela. Instead of being upset, Marcus told Damian to find the kid because he wanted to talk to him. As luck would have it, Adam Leahy knew the Sela coach, so they headed off into the crowd so Marcus could call a kid he'd never met before and congratulate him on his race and for breaking his record. Here's another. Of all the races he's won, awards he's received, and podiums he has stood on top of, if you ask him, his favorite race wasn't the Dream Mile in New York, it wasn't competing in the NCAA Regional Tournament, or winning the Cougar Invitational on his home track. But it was as a sophomore in high school, wearing a pair of mismatched spikes at the state championships, as the Dixon and Green brothers won the 4x4 relay. You see, in all his other races, he was alone. This one he got to share with his friends Colin and Kramer and his brother Matt. One more Marcus story. Did you know that at the state track and field tournament, they compile the final standings for each athlete and then award team points based on how they finished? They add them all up and award a championship to the team with the most points. In his senior year, that championship was Marcus's. But that meant he'd have to enter as many races as he could, which is one thing if you're a sprinter, but it's another thing altogether if you're a distance runner. So he added the 3,200 to his list of things to do that weekend. That race is 8 times around the track. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? When he finished with that, he still had 5 more races to run that weekend, just so his points could be combined with those of his teammates so they could all try to win a team championship. They came close. They got 2nd place, which, for the record, is the highest a White River track team has finished at the state tournament. Now, finishing 2nd was a team effort, and a lot of kids contributed to those points. But let's not ignore the fact that he won 2 state championships that weekend, finished 2nd in 2 more events, and set a tournament record in the 1600 that stood for over a decade. And those points certainly helped the overall team score. Now, follow me on this. If you take the points he earned that weekend and you put them up against the other teams in the 2A, then Marcus Dixon single-handedly tied Tumwater High School for 5th in state that year. And as a junior, he was the 8th best team in the state. Today, Marcus and his wife Maddie live in Bluffdale, Utah, where she works as an ICU nurse and he teaches psychology and coaches both track and cross country at Summit Academy High School. Maddie, an All-American runner herself at BYU, coaches cross country at Salt Lake City Community College. And for the record, she just ran a 4:38 mile herself, as this couple passes on their love of running to a new generation. Marcus Dixon is always careful to keep one eye over his shoulder at all times. Because even though COVID shut down the Dixon family race, he's well aware he's got nieces and nephews out there growing faster and stronger every day. And they're looking for their chance to take him down at Deep Lake one of these days. Like I said, a race is for everything. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the White River Athletic Hall of Fame, 5-time state champion, winner of the Brooks PR Invitational, and Gatorade Track and Field Athlete of the Year, Marcus Dixon.
Thank you so much for doing that. I don't even know how Mr. Dorsey knows stories. But Jeremy, my cousin, who was inducted last year in the Hall of Fame, was part of those family fun runs. I do want to make sure Jeremy knows that the Dean Dixon family, my dad, we have never lost. And now that I married Maddie, I promise you we're going to have kids that will continue to win this tradition. Good luck, Jeremy. I'm a high school teacher, as Mr. Dorsey said, and sometimes my kids ask, Mr. Dixon, why did you become a teacher? And I like to joke with them and say, I peaked in high school, that's why. Tonight I fear that my joke has become a reality. Because in my hands, I'm in the Hall of Fame for peaking in high school. My favorite part, I think, about running was just, even though it's such an individual sport, it's nothing really less than people you get to share it with. And when Mr. Gibson called me, I started thinking about all those memories that was flooded in my head. So tonight I want to share just like the 3 probably Hall of Fame lessons I learned running as a Buckley kid. The first one was taught in 2010. My favorite race of all time was the 4x4 relay. And in track, you have an anchor leg as your last leg. Ours was Colin Green. The first leg was his brother Kramer, and then my brother Matt was the third, and I was the second leg. Colin always said that he wasn't the anchor leg though, he was the sail. So that's my first lesson, is that at White River we don't have anchors. Anchors hold the ship back, we want to fly, so we're the sail. If you know this story, or if you don't know the story, you can talk to my wife Maddie. She wasn't there for it, but she's heard it so many times at the dinner table when we come and visit. But it goes like this: we got the baton in 3rd place, we handed it to Colin. We were racing at Bonnie Lake, who was in our league. We hated them so much that Kramer ended up marrying one of the girls on the team. It's okay, we know Veronica was cheering against us, but we forgive her, we love Veronica. But Colin passes Bonnie Lake's guy, who ended up making the Olympics in 2016. He passes Colin, because if you know something about Colin, no matter how fast he ran in the regular 400, in the relay he always ran faster. And he went around and at the finish line, he passed the team to win by 0.01. And that's what Colin always said. He wasn't an anchor, but he was a sail. The second lesson I thought about was, I'm in the Hall of Fame, it takes a Hall of Fame village. And it really does. I think of Buckley and all the people who were there. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my parents, who always showed up my whole life. So thank you, Mom and Dad, for always showing up and always being there. My siblings, as Mr. Dorsey, I didn't know he knew those things, but my siblings who taught me what it means to run and everything they did for me. My coaches, Damian Marlowe, who taught me that running should be fun, that life you shouldn't take so serious. For Damian Marlowe and Adam Leahy, Mr. Leahy, he taught me what a real long run was when he dropped us off in South Prairie and says, you're going to run up Carbonado today. Coach Rhonda Henry, who taught us to do hard things. Coach Jerry Scheidt, who taught me that track's not just an individual sport, but a team sport, and that we should always try to go and win it as a team. My favorite basketball coach and PE teacher, Mr. John Hippa, who taught me what it really was to be a Buckley kid. When I moved to Buckley when I was in 2005, he was my PE teacher, and he saw that I was good at running. He told me about another legend named Andy Maris. And even though I didn't meet Andy until I was 18 years old, I remember my teammates and I, we would run all the time on the Flume Trail, and we'd go by Maris Farms, and we'd always say, that Andy Maris ran these trails. I know, because it's right next to Maris Farms. And Andy showed us that you can just be a Buckley kid doesn't mean you could be anything. You could be the best in the country. And I'm so thankful for HIPAA to sharing me that story about Andy. I think a lot of kids growing up in my time wanted to be, some type of professional athlete, but when I was a kid, I wanted to be like Andy. He made it possible. It was so fun. So that I'd like to thank that, my training partners, Cody Gould, he was the same age as me. He was one of the top in the state as well. And I know I've never suffered probably more with someone in my entire life than Cody Gould. We always just wanted to go out and run and make ourselves suffer. My mentor when I moved here, and when I came to high school, Sterling Fry, who taught me how to embrace the 3-inch short shorts. Thank you, Sterling. He's here tonight. Chris Fisher, West Houston, my teammates, T. Cash, Tyler Cash, Nate Lenhart, Josh Miller, Devin Leibel, Austin May, Anthony Dove, Lauren Waite, Cassidy France, and so many more people who just made this experience so special. So thank you so much. The last experience I thought about was really you have to learn to fail. And when I came into high school, my first year at cross country, I got 108th place. And I'm a coach now, and I see kids that get discouraged. Luckily for me, I had coaches and a good support system that kept me, told me to keep going. And my freshman year at state in the mile, I got last place. I got the pity clap in. I was 10 seconds behind everybody else. But those failures just helped me keep going and keep going. I realized that those failures really were my sail to help me keep going. So as Colin Green would say, at White River, we don't have anchors, but sails. Thank you.
On behalf of the members of the White River Athletic Hall of Fame Committee, thank you all for coming tonight. But before we go, I'd like to ask your help with a couple of things. This Hall of Fame can only exist through the generous donations of our supporters and sponsors. If you'd like to make a donation, you can bring a check to the high school or visit our website and contribute online. Everything you need to make a donation can be found in the back of your program. Those donations will allow us to continue providing nights like tonight. Second, it's really difficult gathering the artifacts that we use to decorate tonight, such as the baseball cards, the 2012 track jerseys, and the trophies from the 80s and 90s. So to cut to the chase, I am shamelessly asking for your stuff. We are always in the search for additional memorabilia from our school's athletic past. If you've got an old jersey sitting in a closet, a couple of game programs you've held onto, or mementos from your high school playing days that you put in a box decades ago and your wife wants it out of the house, we would love to add them to the artifacts we're gathering as we work to bring our athletic past back for everyone by moving items like these out of boxes and off garage shelves and share them with Mountaineer and Hornet fans on nights like tonight. The last and most important thing is this: any Hall of Fame is only as good as the people who are in it. And we're always looking for nominations. We've worked hard on the 14 inductees we have so far, but are well aware there are so many more Mountaineers and Hornets whose athletic accomplishments deserve a place in this Hall of Fame. And that's where you come in. We need you to go to our website and tell us the stories we need to hear. The information you need to get to our website and place a nomination can be found in the back of your program. Our next induction night is now just a year away, and we'll be meeting soon to begin planning. But first, we really want you to tell us who deserves to be included alongside the 14 inductees we have so far. We look forward to seeing you all back here next year as we induct the class of 2024 into the White River Athletic Hall of Fame. Thank you all for coming, and drive home safe.